So Steve and Brett and I actually worked together back in the 90s, but we all became partners around the turn of the century when we started Dixon, Scholl and Bailey. We started on January 1st, 2000 is when we started the business.
Proudly serving clients.
Yeah, since the turn of the century. I thought this was about Justice Chavez. Scholl? That's it. Oh.
Growing up, I used to work at the office. I was a runner at his office going way back, and I saw the stacks of papers on his desk, and I thought there's no way I would ever do that. I was also able to watch him here at the law school and then also at trial and see how well he communicates those stacks of papers and distills them into an issue that gets everybody nodding their head thinking, well, yeah, of course that's the way that issue should be resolved.
The first time I met Steve Scholl, he made me cry. And that's not usually what people say about him because he's kind of a funny guy, animated, engaging. But I'm telling you right now, I had one class with the guy. I ran out of there crying and I never went back. It was trial practice class, and for some reason he chose me to as the first person to get up and examine a witness. So this is like the first day of trial practice, and he doesn't let you bring any notes or really even prepare. And I got up and I could not even formulate one sentence, much less a question. And he just he's persistent, and he expects the best, which he should, rightly so. But I just couldn't give it to him that day. I started to cry and it just got worse and worse. And I literally grabbed my books and left the class in the middle. Yeah, and I never went back.
He makes the practice of law fun. He makes the business of the practice of law fun.
My favorite thing about him is watching his relationship with his clients. If you're ever in that context with him, in the tent with the attorney-client relationship, there is no doubt that all of his clients believe they have one lifeline, one way to freedom, and it's through him. And he binds himself to clients in ways that I've never seen other lawyers do.
So my dad was on the Dallas police force for 6 years. Actually, I was born in Dallas, as was my sister. And so growing up, we'd hear police stories, and that's what caught my attention. I thought that being a police officer was the cool job. It was the fun thing to do because, like I said, he's such a great storyteller. That's the way I would go to sleep at night is, hey, Dad, tell me some police stories. You know, one thing that he would always do, he would love a good chase. And he would talk about pulling his squad car out after a big high-speed chase, spilling out onto the concrete and running after people. And his rule was wherever the person ran, once my dad caught him, he would walk them back through that same area to show everybody, all the bystanders, this is what happens when you run from us. So if it busted through a Burger King, once he caught him, he'd walk back through the Burger King, and everybody would say, oh, he caught him.
I think of sitting in classrooms with him, teaching classes with him, where he shares some of those skills and tools and so forth and passes on knowledge that you've got. Then you pick up these little gems. Getting to try cases with him in court, seeing just how much of an advocate you can be on behalf of a client in terms of giving your all.
So my dad's interest in the law and law enforcement, I think, stems back to his childhood in Silver City. My granddad was a magistrate judge in Grant County for about 25 years. And so my dad and his siblings were involved with the campaigns and making posters and getting the name out there for re-elections. And so they would have elections in the household. And just recently my mom found a little slip of paper that my dad had made when he was running for sheriff of the house and sheriff of the yard, and soliciting votes probably among all the people that were running for the same position, namely his sister and brother and another brother. But yet he was still making these cards apparently and handing them out to try to be elected as sheriff of the house and yard.
Steve, I thought Steve funny, right? Steve's not, that's an incomplete word to describe Steve as being funny because he's far more than funny. He can tell any story in its simplest form, or he can make it entertaining, and that's generally Steve's option.
I asked him recently who his favorite philosopher is, and he said Homer Simpson, because he's relevant.
There's a great story that my grandma would love to tell, was when my dad and his younger brother were young, she had to go into town to run some errands, run to the store or something. So she said, boys, do your chores while I'm gone. My grandma went into town, came back, so she's pulling up to the house and sees all these cars stacked up in front of the house. So she thinks there's been a crash, maybe a fire or something, so she runs up there. And unbeknownst to her, instead of doing the chores, my dad and his brother made signs that said, Mrs. Scholl is cruel to children. And they made buttons that said CARP, and they were picketing, saying, children are real people, CARP, 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 carp. And my grandma shows up and is mortified. Here she is, the judge's wife, and having her 2 children, little hooligan kids, out there picketing her decision to tell them, hey, do your chores. One of the things that story demonstrates is his ability to effectively get his message across and to communicate it in a way that draws a crowd and gets people leaning in and listening and interested in what he has to say. And of course, when you're a small child picketing your mother being cruel to children, that'll get anybody's attention.
So I've regretted the fact that I didn't actually get to spend a whole semester, a year with Steve learning trial skills, but Steve is so generous of heart and spirit that he's never held that against me and has always given me that opportunity since the first I asked him to help me, whether I could pay him or not, quite honestly. And he's really helped me figure out my voice and what works best with the jury for me, and how I can be the best representative and steward not only of this law school, of this community, but of course my specific client.
One of the things that I think people know to some extent about him is how much time he spends at the law school. He is an adjunct for evidence and trial practice. He teaches his own trial practice course. He teaches the deposition course in the spring. Now they're offering it in the fall. He is past president of the Alumni Association. He's the past president of the Albuquerque Bar Association. Plus he's got a day job. And he coaches mock trial. And any one of those is a full-time commitment. And the most amazing thing to me is just how he finds time to not only participate, but to lead those different groups.
So I'm pretty sure that there are only 24 hours in a day, like empirically. But I don't think that that's actually true for Steve, but that's because I don't think he's actually like a live person. He's more like Santa. And that you believe, like he's there, that he's gonna come through, but you don't quite know how, so you just have to believe.
An important thing about Steve and Chris and their family that's unique is they are not selective about who's a member. You can get in for almost no charge. As near as I could tell, all it takes is being there near dinner time, and you just get to get your legs right under the dinner table and go. And I've always felt like that was a really special thing about their family. They adopted my family. We were sort of from out of state when we first came here, and we've always sort of come up as Scholls.
Steve and Chris are so committed to their kids and their grandkids. Like nothing makes them happier than being with their family, other than being with their friends whom they've brought into their family. And if you've spent any time with them at their house or on their boat or just in their space, you know that their hearts are they're infinitely large.
I think his biggest lesson that he taught me in being intrigued in the law and then now practicing law is that you can be both a good lawyer and a good dad. And he was always there for us. Growing up, he coached baseball. He taught mock trial. We prosecuted the big bad wolf in middle school. He was always there, and he put in his time. He'd get up at 3 in the morning and go do a full day's work, and then get back for when we were back from school. And he made it happen. And he taught me from early on, you don't have to choose one or the other. And that's been his biggest impression on me now as a lawyer with 2 little kids at home, is that I don't have to choose one or the other. It's hard, yes, but you can do both and succeed at both.
My favorite thing over the years about Stephen is in his skill in the courtroom. I've just got a lot to pick from. I mean, he and I have tried cases together. We've taught law school classes and coached mock trial teams and gone out on needed jobs. And I've seen him do flawless technical maneuvers with evidence in court. I've seen him do wilting witness examinations, jaw-dropping, persuasive arguments. But the very best thing that I've ever seen him do was something that happened a few years ago. Steve and his family were victimized by a serial drunk driver. One member of their family was killed, and I watched Steve shepherd his family through the legal and financial parts of that process. And I was in some of those meetings with them, and at one point it became necessary for a member of his family to go to Metro Court and speak, I believe, in a criminal proceeding in front of then Judge Nakamura. And Jerry and I, we went along with Steve and his family for that hearing. And the feelings were heavy. You could feel the pain in the hearts of his family, and you could also feel what he was offering them as an advocate. And when we got to court, Steve walked through the bar and sat down at counsel table, and I went in there with him and sat next to him. And as he got up and began speaking with Judge Nakamura, that was just a weighty thing. I didn't know if he was going to make it, so I did something I'd never done. I got up and I stood behind him. My thought was I'd get right there and just grab him by the belt in case we had to get out of there if things went bad. But when I got up there, expecting to feel something like vulnerability or uncertainty, it wasn't there. That place where his big old heart hangs from, that's made out of iron. He's got that in his soul.
So tonight's a big night for my dad, but I didn't want tonight to pass without also recognizing my mom and the sacrifices she's made to get him to where he's at professionally and personally, and then my sister and then me as well. When they left Dallas and my dad quit his job with the police force and came here to go to law school, and my mom kept us afloat. She babysat, she did odd jobs and got us through. And and now with Dad's involvement in the law school, he's down here all weekend, many weekends, and my mom oftentimes is the one at home cooking, bringing food down for all the lawyers or adjuncts or students so that nobody's bellies are growling in the afternoon session. And it's an incredible commitment that both my dad and my mom have made, and she needs to be acknowledged for that as well, because it's amazing.
I don't know how to end this. Should we say, because he knows how to stand and deliver, or let's say a prayer for his leather liver? I don't know. Good job, Steve.
So I want to propose a toast, and as everybody's sitting there listening to this, I hope they'll grab a glass, pick it up, and as we toast to Steve and toast to all of this, Steve, we are very, very proud of you. We're happy to have been partners with you for these many years and get to work with you and practice with you. And at this point, we just say, may this be your worst day.
Steve has so many students and colleagues and admirers and friends and family. I literally can't believe that he asked me to speak for him tonight. I am so honored, and I have to say I am so grateful that even though I wasted my opportunity to spend several times a week with you in a very structured and intense way, that you nonetheless made yourself available to me and so many around me, Steve, to share with us your gifts. And you truly are a gift to this community and to the law school and to your family and friends. And I couldn't be happier that you are being honored tonight. Love you. And Chris.
So one of my proudest moments as a lawyer was when my dad swore me in. And I am constantly thinking about that day. He took a photograph of me as a child when he was sworn in, and he took it and he waved it before the court when he was making moving for my admission. And I think about that a lot, and think about all the times that lawyers have come up to me and told me what an impact he's had on their careers. And he's done that not just for me, but for countless lawyers here in our state. And it makes me so proud to hear those stories from those lawyers who come up and say, your dad's class was the best thing for me in law school. I've learned so much, and my practice is so much different because of him. So I'm so proud to be his son. I'm so proud of my mom and dad for this recognition tonight, and love both of them so much. And just thank you for everything. I love you both.